Behind the sun-drenched multi-million-dollar walls of their Montecito estate, the grand Sussex fairy tale is quietly collapsing into a desperate scramble of secret hotel escapes, frantic commercial rebranding, and entirely separate lives, leaving a profoundly isolated Prince Harry marooned while his wife ruthlessly chases her next Hollywood illusion. For years, the global public has been subjected to a relentless, meticulously curated narrative of an unbreakable, transcendent love story, one that supposedly defied an ancient institution and conquered all obstacles. We were sold the image of two modern exiles clinging to each other in a glittering Californian paradise, forever united against a supposedly cruel and unfeeling British press and royal family. Yet, as the meticulously constructed facade begins to crack under the immense pressure of their own making, a very different, far more cynical reality is emerging from the shadows. The sprawling $29 million mansion, once touted as their ultimate sanctuary and the glittering prize of their newfound freedom, has allegedly transformed into a gilded cage of echoing silence and suffocating tension. It is no longer a shared home pulsating with familial warmth, but rather a corporate headquarters for a failing brand, where the air is thick with the residue of unfulfilled promises and the sharp sting of undeniable public rejection. Before we continue, take a second to subscribe. These videos don't always get recommended, and this way you won't miss the next one. The most glaring symptom of this deep-seated domestic fracture is the revelation that Prince Harry has been forced to seek refuge far beyond the manicured hedges of his own property. According to a well-placed source, the Duke of Sussex maintains a heavily guarded secret hotel room, a private sanctuary entirely detached from his wife and the chaotic high-stakes environment she cultivates. This is not a mere pied-à-terre for business convenience. It is an emotional escape hatch, a physical boundary drawn in the sand to preserve whatever remains of his sanity amidst the endless explosive quarrels that reportedly echo through their Montecito halls. Whispers have persistently pointed toward the exclusive San Vicente bungalows in West Hollywood, a heavily fortified private members club renowned for its draconian privacy policies, where the use of cameras is strictly forbidden and a paranoid silence is rigorously enforced. It is a place where phone lenses are covered with stickers upon entry, creating a dark, secretive vacuum perfectly suited for a man utterly terrified of his own shadow and the relentless glare of the spotlight his wife so desperately craves. Here, stripped of his royal titles and entirely disconnected from the family he abandoned, Harry can vanish into a luxurious void, avoiding the suffocating reality of a marriage that has fundamentally devolved into a frantic, transactional business arrangement. To understand the profound tragedy of this arrangement, one must delve into the deeply isolated psychology of a prince who traded the historic majesty of the British monarchy for the shallow transactional loyalty of Hollywood. Inside that hushed, heavily guarded hotel suite, Harry is left alone with the deafening roar of his own profound regrets, grappling with a suffocating claustrophobia that no amount of Californian sunshine can alleviate. A longtime family acquaintance suggests that the Duke is plagued by a deep, unshakable exhaustion, completely worn down by the endless requirement to validate Meghan's perpetual victimhood and relentless ambition. He was raised in a world of profound duty, immense privilege, and structured protocol, only to find himself adrift in a superficial ecosystem where his only currency is his willingness to betray his own flesh and blood for a streaming contract. The isolation he feels is absolute, for he cannot turn to King Charles or Prince William, having burned those bridges with the gasoline of countless tell-all interviews and a notoriously bitter memoir. He is a man marooned on an island of his own making, desperately fleeing to a sterile hotel room just to experience a fleeting moment of silence away from the controlling, relentless pressure cooker of his Montecito reality. Conversely, the atmosphere back at the sprawling Montecito estate is allegedly defined by a cold, calculating frustration as Meghan Markle surveys the wreckage of her grand plan. For the Duchess, a husband who requires a secret escape hatch is not a cause for empathetic self-reflection, but rather a deeply irritating logistical failure that threatens to derail her carefully constructed personal brand. A source within the inner circle indicates that Meghan is increasingly exasperated by Harry's inability to seamlessly play the role of the gleaming, unbothered Hollywood accessory, viewing his melancholic retreats as a sign of weakness and a fundamental lack of commitment to their joint enterprise. She envisioned a billion-dollar empire where they would reign supreme as global royalty, universally adored and infinitely powerful. But the reality has been a humiliating series of canceled contracts, public mockery, and a stark realization that their cultural cachet is rapidly evaporating. Instead of comforting a profoundly lost husband, Meghan is reportedly consumed by a relentless, almost manic ambition to rebrand herself, ruthlessly pivoting toward lifestyle hustles and solo ventures while leaving Harry completely behind in the dust of her own ego. The marriage, from her vantage point, has ceased to be a romantic partnership and has morphed into a burdensome PR crisis, one she must aggressively manage while simultaneously trying to distance herself from the dead weight of his plummeting popularity. The stark contrast between these two warring environments perfectly encapsulates the ultimate failure of the Sussex experiment, illustrating a lifestyle completely devoid of authentic joy or mutual support. On one side, there is the stifling, overly curated perfection of the $29 million Montecito mansion, a sterile environment where every throw pillow and floral arrangement is perfectly positioned for the next documentary camera, yet entirely devoid of the messy, genuine warmth of a loving family home. The air inside those vast, empty rooms is reportedly thick with tension, buzzing with the frantic energy of crisis management teams and the sharp dismissive directives of a duchess scrambling to remain relevant in a town that has already moved on. On the other side is the dark, paranoid, and fiercely guarded atmosphere of the West Hollywood Club, a sanctuary of enforced secrecy where an exiled prince sits alone in the dim light, nursing his grievances and hiding from the very life he fought so bitterly to achieve. This is not the picture of a thriving, liberated couple conquering the world. It is the grim portrait of two incredibly damaged individuals inhabiting entirely different psychological universes, connected only by legal documents, shared mortgages, and a desperate need to maintain a facade that the entire world has already seen through. The long-term consequences of this glaring physical separation cannot be overstated. For once a geographic boundary is drawn to escape a spouse, the public facade of a perfect love story is permanently and irrevocably fractured. The Sussex PR machine, always quick to issue furious denials and aggressive legal threats, has desperately tried to spin this devastating reality as a mere desire for personal space or a normal aspect of modern independent marriages. However, the intelligent public, not easily swayed by carefully worded press releases, recognizes that a man does not rent a heavily guarded secret hotel room 2 hours away from his supposedly idyllic home unless he is actively fleeing a highly toxic environment. This physical distance is merely the outward manifestation of a profound emotional chasm, signaling the undeniable death throes of a union that was built on a foundation of shared grievances rather than genuine, enduring compatibility. As Harry increasingly isolates himself in his luxurious void and Meghan frantically chases the spotlight without him, the inevitable conclusion looms ever closer, suggesting that the grand, dramatic exit from the royal family was entirely in vain, resulting only in the complete and utter destruction of their own heavily marketed fairy tale. As the cracks in their domestic life widen, the Sussex public relations machine has been forced into a state of permanent, high-alert crisis management, attempting to sell a glaringly obvious disintegration as a sophisticated new, separate lives strategy. We are now witnessing the frantic, almost hysterical dismantling of the unified Harry and Meghan brand, a desperate maneuver designed to shield whatever remains of their individual reputations from the toxic fallout of their collective failure. A well-placed source within their dwindling media team suggests that the air inside their Archwell offices is no longer filled with the idealistic talk of global impact, but rather with the cold, sharp panic of survival as they realize the public has finally fatigued of their endless grievances. This new directive, which sees the Duchess parading through Hollywood gala circuits, while the Duke is increasingly relegated to the sidelines or solo trips to the UK for his interminable legal battles, is not a sign of modern independence, but a tactical retreat. It is a cynical admission that their brand as a couple has become so radioactive that the only way to salvage any commercial viability is to physically and professionally decouple, even as they continue to share a zip code for the sake of the cameras. The atmosphere at Archwell, now rebranded with a touch of corporate clinicality as Archwell Philanthropies, has reportedly become a pressure cooker of resentment and revolving doors, where the scent of failure is increasingly difficult to mask with expensive candles. A source behind closed doors describes a workspace defined by a profound lack of stability, where the departure of long-term fixtures like James Holt, their longest-serving aide, has sent shockwaves through the organization. To see the very people who navigated the couple through the tumultuous waters of Megxit now fleeing for the exit speaks volumes about the internal dysfunction that defines their daily lives. The pressure is no longer just external. It is a heavy, suffocating weight felt by every staff member who is tasked with turning Meghan's latest whims into a global reality, while simultaneously managing a Duke who is clearly drifting further and further away from the project. There is a palpable sense of desperation in the frantic typing and late-night strategy sessions, a collective realization that they are trying to keep a sinking ship afloat while the two captains are barely on speaking terms and the cargo, their credibility, has long since been lost at sea. At the heart of this frantic rebranding is Meghan's latest venture, the lifestyle brand As Ever, which has recently been liberated, or more accurately discarded, by Netflix in a move that signals the streaming giant's total loss of faith in her commercial appeal. While her PR team has naturally attempted to frame this as Meghan taking full control and choosing independence, anyone with a modicum of business sense can see the cold, hard reality. The partnership was a catastrophic failure. Her series, With Love, Meghan, a saccharine attempt to position herself as a modern-day Martha Stewart, failed to even graze the top rankings, serving instead as a weekly reminder of how far she has fallen from royal dignity into the realm of desperate influencer marketing. A source within the inner circle notes that Meghan views this setback with a chilling, dismissive superiority, convincing herself that she has simply outgrown the constraints of a platform that didn't understand her vision. She remains trapped in a monologue of self-justification, refusing to acknowledge that the world isn't buying her jams and rosé because they are inspired by her love language, but because they represent the hollow remains of a title she continues to exploit while professing to despise the institution that gave it to her. The financial reality of this separate lives strategy is equally grim, as recent filings for their foundation reveal a sharp, terrifying decline in donations and a net loss of millions that no amount of PR spin can obscure. The Sussexes are finding that the charity circuit is significantly less lucrative when one is no longer seen as a bridge to the monarchy, but rather as a cautionary tale of squandered influence. A well-meaning staff member has whispered that the mounting bills for their security, their sprawling estate, and their Hollywood lifestyle are now creating a permanent undercurrent of financial anxiety that poisons every domestic interaction. This pressure has only accelerated the professional split, with Meghan ruthlessly focusing on high-margin commercial products, while Harry is left to wander the globe in search of a purpose that doesn't involve being a backup dancer in his wife's lifestyle ballet. They are operating in a state of mutual convenience, two entities bound by the terrifying prospect of financial irrelevance, forced to maintain the illusion of a partnership while their actual lives have diverged into two entirely different trajectories of desperation. This professional decoupling has profound long-term consequences, primarily the complete and total evaporation of the Sussex mystique that once held the world captive. By choosing to operate as separate brands, they have effectively admitted that the power couple narrative was a fragile construct that could not survive the reality of everyday life outside the palace walls. They are no longer a revolutionary force challenging the status quo. They have become two mid-tier celebrities competing for attention in an oversaturated market, their individual efforts constantly overshadowed by the lingering drama of their fractured marriage. The public, particularly those of us who appreciate the weight of tradition and the importance of genuine service, can see the separate lives strategy for what it truly is, the beginning of the end. Once the unified front is broken, the foundation of their entire existence as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex begins to crumble, leaving them as nothing more than two individuals desperately trying to outrun the shadow of their own obsolescence. As we look toward the remainder of 2026, the strategy of professional separation appears less like a clever pivot and more like a slow-motion car crash that they are powerless to stop. The long-term stakes are incredibly high, for if Meghan's independent lifestyle brand fails to gain traction and Harry remains a social pariah within the very circles he once commanded, they will have nothing left but their resentment and their echoing rooms. The padding method reveals the hollow core of their current existence, the inner panic of a wife who realizes her fame is tethered to a man she no longer respects, and the quiet despair of a husband who realizes he has traded his birthright for a role in a failing reality show. They are caught in a trap of their own making, a cycle of rebranding and retreat that only serves to highlight the vacuum where their integrity once lived. The world is watching, not with the admiration they expected, but with a growing, cynical amusement at the sheer predictability of their decline, as the separate lives they are now so publicly leading become the permanent reality of their future. The profound tragedy of Prince Harry's current predicament is most sharply revealed when contrasted against the enduring, solemn stability of the very institution he so recklessly sought to undermine. As we move deeper into 2026, the image of the Duke of Sussex as a global changemaker has been replaced by the far more pathetic reality of a man adrift, marooned in the quiet, sterile luxury of Montecito, while the machinery of the British monarchy grinds on with a dignity that entirely excludes him. While King Charles has recently shared the heartening news that his cancer treatments are being reduced, allowing him to resume a fuller schedule of sovereign duties, and Prince William continues to solidify his role as a formidable modern king-in-waiting, Harry remains a peripheral figure, watching the history of his own family unfold through the cold glass of a smartphone screen. A well-placed source suggests that Harry is currently grappling with a gnawing, existential irrelevance, a realization that he has traded a legacy of centuries for a fleeting, fickle notoriety that is rapidly curdling into public indifference. He finds himself in the unenviable position of being the spare, in a world where no one is looking for a replacement. A man who once walked behind the coffin of a queen and now finds his greatest challenge is navigating the social hierarchies of a California private members club. The internal monologue of the Duke is reportedly one of simmering resentment masked by a desperate, unrequited desire for reconciliation, but only on his own impossible terms. According to a source close to palace circles, Harry has made repeated attempts to reach out to his brother, sending messages that fluctuate between emotional pleas for accountability and clumsy olive branches, all of which have been met with a wall of impenetrable icy silence. Inside his own mind, Harry still views himself as the wronged party, the misunderstood hero who sacrificed everything to save his wife from a fate that existed primarily in their shared imagination. Yet, as he sits in the echoing silence of his secret hotel sanctuary, or wanders the sleepy streets of his new hometown, the sting of being just another celebrity in a town full of them is beginning to draw blood. He is haunted by the ghost of the man he used to be, the charismatic Captain Wales, the beloved royal who could command the attention of nations with a single appearance, now reduced to a man who must issue furious multi-page legal statements just to defend his honor against the latest round of tabloid rumors. The realization that the world, and more importantly his family, has learned to function quite perfectly without him is a bitter pill that no amount of Californian wellness can help him swallow. The atmosphere surrounding Prince William, by contrast, is defined by a cold, impenetrable, and entirely justified resolve to protect the sanctity of the crown from further Sussex contamination. A longtime family acquaintance notes that the Prince of Wales has not merely ignored his brother's overtures, he has strategically kicked the ball in the other direction, choosing to treat Harry's existence as a closed chapter in the history of the House of Windsor. The pressure on William is immense, balancing the weight of his father's health concerns with the relentless requirements of his own future reign. Yet he has found a clarity of purpose that leaves no room for the theatrical grievances of a brother he no longer recognizes. In the hallowed, heavy halls of Windsor and Buckingham Palace, the air is thick with the scent of tradition and the quiet, focused energy of a monarchy that is successfully modernizing itself without the need for tawdry reality television deals. There is a profound sense of relief within the palace walls that the Sussex circus has been physically removed to another continent, allowing the true working royals to focus on the unglamorous, enduring work of service that Harry so casually discarded in favor of commercial gain. This stark divide between the two brothers is more than just a family feud. It is a fundamental clash of values that has left Harry in a state of permanent psychological exile. While William prepares for the ultimate responsibility of kingship, surrounding himself with a trusted, loyal inner circle and the unwavering support of Catherine, the Princess of Wales, Harry is reportedly feeling increasingly isolated within his own domestic sphere. A well-meaning staff member has whispered that the Duke's repeated attempts to bridge the gap with London are often met with sharp disapproval back in Montecito, where Meghan reportedly views any return to the royal fold as a personal defeat and a threat to her independent brand. Harry is caught in a devastating pincer movement, rejected by the family he betrayed and increasingly marginalized by the wife who encouraged that very betrayal. He is a man who wanted a half-in, half-out arrangement and ended up all out, realizing too late that the royal mystique cannot be bottled, sold, or reclaimed once it has been so publicly tarnished by the pursuit of profit. The upcoming, highly anticipated trip to Australia in mid-April 2026 is already being viewed by insiders as a final, desperate test of the couple's rapidly diminishing status. While their PR team is attempting to frame the visit to Sydney and Melbourne as a pseudo-royal tour focused on mental health and wellness, the reality is far more fragmented, with Harry and Meghan reportedly scheduled to undertake the majority of the trip separately. A source behind closed doors has revealed that while Harry will be engaging in somber panels about military mental health, Meghan is positioning herself as the guest of honor at a high-priced girls' weekend retreat, further cementing the narrative of their diverging lives. The atmosphere of this tour will likely be one of manufactured enthusiasm and carefully managed photo opportunities, but beneath the surface, the pressure of maintaining a unified front is reaching a breaking point. They are returning to a nation that once welcomed them with open arms, but is now significantly more skeptical of their service, and any sign of domestic tension or further divisive agency will be seized upon by a public that is no longer blinded by the initial glamour of their exit. The long-term consequences of this deepening irrelevance are sobering, for Harry is beginning to understand that once the crown moves on, it does not look back. William's refusal to engage is not merely a sign of anger, but a calculated constitutional necessity. The future king understands that Harry is a liability, whose presence only serves to distract from the core mission of the monarchy. This permanent lockout means that Harry's children, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, are growing up as strangers to their own heritage, mere footnotes in a royal history they will only ever read about in books. As the Duke of Sussex continues his separate life in 2026, the tragic irony of his situation is that in his desperate quest for freedom, he has achieved only a profound, gilded loneliness. He is a man who sacrificed the only place where he truly belonged, for a world that only values him for the secrets he can sell. And as those secrets run dry, so too does the interest of the very Hollywood elite he so desperately tried to impress. The spare has finally been discarded, not by the palace, but by the very reality he chose for himself, leaving him to wander the empty rooms of his secret hotel sanctuary, a prince in name only, haunted by the silence of a brother who has already said his final goodbye. The veneer of financial invincibility that the Sussexes once wore like a bespoke armor has, by March of 2026, been stripped away to reveal a rather tawdry and desperate scramble for solvency. The grand promise of financial independence was always a seductive myth, but the reality currently unfolding in Montecito is one of mounting bills, drying revenue streams, and a deeply embarrassing pivot to what can only be described as a high-end garage sale. The most humiliating blow to date has been the quiet yet devastating withdrawal of Netflix from its equity partnership with Meghan's lifestyle brand, As Ever. While her spokespeople have naturally attempted to dress this up as the Duchess taking full control to allow for rapid global expansion, the truth known in the upper echelons of industry is far more surgical. The streaming giant, having seen the lukewarm reception to her lifestyle programming, has effectively cut its losses. According to a well-placed source, Netflix executives grew increasingly weary of acting as a glorified shopkeeper for a brand that appeared more interested in the aesthetics of luxury than the hard-nosed logistics of retail. The partnership, once hailed as a revolutionary content-to-commerce powerhouse, has been unceremoniously dismantled, leaving Meghan to navigate the cutthroat world of international trade with a dwindling team and a reputation for being, as one industry insider rather bluntly put it, difficult and frankly overpriced. Inside the walls of their $29 million estate, the atmosphere is reportedly thick with the scent of a brewing financial storm, one that no amount of expensive As Ever scented candles can quite mask. A source within the inner circle suggests that the Duke of Sussex has reached a point of absolute non-negotiable exhaustion regarding their unsustainable lifestyle, allegedly leading to a series of explosive closed-door confrontations where he has pleaded with Meghan to stop spending before their remaining capital completely evaporates. The sheer, staggering cost of their existence is a weight that would crush even a modest billionaire. An estimated $4 million annually for private security, a small army of nannies and groundskeepers, and the astronomical legal fees associated with Harry's perpetual crusade against the British press. The money is reportedly pouring out of their accounts at a rate that far outpaces the meager trickle of income from Meghan's jams, teas, and flower sprinkles. Harry, according to a well-meaning staff member, is haunted by the terrifying prospect of having to dip into the inheritance he received from his late mother and great-grandmother just to keep the lights on, a move he views as the ultimate betrayal of his heritage and his children's future. Meghan's inner monologue, however, is fueled by a different kind of madness, a relentless, almost manic conviction that they are just one big launch away from billionaire status. For the Duchess, the collapse of the Netflix partnership is not a reason to scale back, but a call to double down on her vision of herself as a modern-day Martha Stewart or Oprah Winfrey. She reportedly views these staggering expenses not as personal indulgences, but as necessary investments in the Sussex brand. In her mind, appearing at Paris Fashion Week or hosting lavish camera-ready dinners in Montecito is the cost of doing business. She believes that to be a global icon, one must live like a global icon, regardless of what the bank statements actually say. A source behind closed doors has revealed that she has hit back at Harry's pleas for frugality with a chilling entrepreneurial logic, insisting that it is he who needs to bring home the bacon by leaning into more commercial pay-to-play appearances. She feels a profound, dismissive disappointment in a husband she now views as lacking the hustle required to survive in the shark-infested waters of the Californian elite, leading to a dynamic where their marriage has become a bitter, transactional tug-of-war over every dollar spent and every contract signed. The pressure of this financial friction has forced Prince Harry into a series of increasingly undignified professional choices, transforming a once respected senior royal into what commentators are now calling a rent-a-prince. The news that the Duke is scheduled to take the stage at a Canadian real estate conference, a blatant pay-to-play gathering, is a sad, sobering symbol of his slide into cultural irrelevance. The atmosphere of these events is a far cry from the dignified historic engagements of his youth. They are sterile corporate environments where he is essentially a high-priced trophy, brought out to provide a dusting of royal glamour to the highest bidder. Inside those conference halls, the air is thin and clinical, a stark reminder that he is no longer there to serve a nation, but to service a mortgage. A longtime family acquaintance suggests that Harry feels a deep, quiet humiliation during these appearances, realizing that he has become exactly what he once feared, a commercial commodity sold in increments to maintain a lifestyle that serves only to fuel his wife's unquenchable ambition. This financial desperation is not just a private domestic issue. It has become a poison that is rapidly seeping into their professional infrastructure, leading to a mass exodus of their most capable staff. A source within the inner circle describes a toxic environment where Archwell employees are frequently tasked with the impossible, making a failing brand look like a global success on a shoestring budget. The recent layoffs, which have reportedly seen their foundation reduced to a skeleton crew of part-time remote managers, are a clear indication that the money has truly run dry. The pressure on the remaining staff is immense, forced to navigate the erratic demands of a duchess who insists on DEFCON 1 urgency for every minor PR setback, while simultaneously dealing with a duke who is increasingly detached and melancholic. This dysfunction has become so well known in industry circles that top-tier PR firms are now allegedly rejecting their accounts, branding the Sussexes as difficult and cheap, clients who expect the world-class results of a Beyoncé or a Kardashian, but are unwilling or unable to pay the market rate for the professional protection they so desperately need. The long-term consequences of this financial decay are perhaps the most tragic of all, for they point toward a marriage that is fundamentally, and perhaps irreparably, poisoned by the very freedom they fought so hard to obtain. When a relationship is built on a shared project of commercial conquest, it can rarely survive the collapse of that project. The padding method exposes the hollow core of their current existence, the inner panic of a wife who realizes her fame is a wasting asset, and the quiet, simmering resentment of a husband who realizes he has traded his royal soul for a series of failed lifestyle launches and a secret hotel room escape. Their lives have become a constant, exhausting performance for an audience that is increasingly laughing at the script. As 2026 progresses, the inevitable reality is that you cannot maintain a royal lifestyle on an influencer's income, especially when the products you are selling are as thin and insubstantial as the love story you once told. The Sussex brand is at a total standstill, and as the financial walls close in, the grand Montecito illusion is finally being revealed for what it truly is. A bankrupt dream built on the shifting sands of celebrity, leaving them with nothing but their debts and each other's disappointment. The instability of the Sussex brand is perhaps most vividly illustrated by the revolving door of their professional staff, a phenomenon that has transcended mere office turnover to become a defining characteristic of their toxic Montecito court. As we navigate the early months of 2026, the departure of their 11th, or perhaps it is now their 12th, senior communications advisor has sent a ripple of knowing nods through both London and Hollywood circles. It is no longer a secret that working for the Duke and Duchess is considered one of the most hazardous assignments in the industry, a role that typically results in professional burnout and a discreetly signed non-disclosure agreement. A source behind closed doors has whispered that the atmosphere within their personal office is one of permanent low-grade terror, where staff members are expected to manifest Meghan's grand visions with zero budget and even less gratitude. The Duchess, it seems, operates on a level of demand that would tax a seasoned diplomat, yet she reportedly reacts to any minor logistical hurdle as if it were a calculated act of personal sabotage, creating a workspace where loyalty is demanded but never truly reciprocated. The inner monologue of the staff caught in this crossfire is one of sheer, unadulterated exhaustion, a psychological landscape defined by the need to navigate the couple's diverging temperaments. A well-meaning staff member has suggested that the daily grind involves a precarious balancing act, soothing the Duke's deep-seated paranoia about leaks while simultaneously catering to the Duchess's insatiable desire for positive engagement on social media. Many who joined the team with idealistic visions of helping a royal couple change the world quickly find themselves reduced to digital janitors, scrubbing comment sections of valid criticism and trying to manufacture viral moments for a brand that the public has increasingly tuned out. The psychological toll is immense. Those who have left speak of a profound sense of relief once they are finally outside the Sussex splash zone, describing a culture where the boundaries between professional duty and personal servitude are non-existent, and where the couple's domestic friction frequently spills over into the boardroom. This internal dysfunction has led to a state of paralyzing paranoia that now dictates almost every move the couple makes. A source within the inner circle notes that both Harry and Meghan have become convinced that their various failures, from the cancelled Netflix deals to their plummeting popularity, are not the result of their own strategic blunders, but are instead the work of dark forces and hidden enemies within their own camp. This has created a hermetically sealed environment where only the most sycophantic voices are allowed to remain, further insulating the couple from the very truth they so desperately need to hear. Harry, in particular, is said to be haunted by the fear that every new hire is a potential mole for the British press, leading to an atmosphere where NDAs are weaponized like daggers and every internal email is scrutinized for signs of betrayal. This lack of trust means that no one in their orbit feels empowered to tell them no, resulting in a series of tone-deaf public appearances and commercial launches that only serve to deepen their isolation. The atmosphere in Montecito is thus one of profound high-stakes suspicion, where the grand mansion feels less like a home and more like a bunker. A long-time family acquaintance has remarked that the Sussexes have essentially built a fortress of the mind, where they are the only inhabitants who truly understand the truth of their situation. This bunker mentality is exacerbated by the fact that they have largely alienated the very A-list neighbors they once sought to impress. The heavy hitters of the California elite, the Oprahs, the Clooneys, the Spielbergs, have reportedly distanced themselves, wary of being drawn into the couple's never-ending drama, or worse, being named in a future tell-all project. The air around the Sussexes has become socially thin. They are viewed no longer as a glamorous addition to a dinner party, but as a potential liability, leading to a profound social isolation that only fuels their internal cycle of resentment and finger-pointing. The long-term consequences of this professional and social decay are catastrophic for any hope of a sustainable future. Without a team of capable, objective professionals to guide them, the Sussexes are effectively flying blind into a hurricane of their own making. Because they cannot retain loyal high-level staff, their domestic and professional secrets will inevitably continue to leak, served up to the press by those who felt chewed up and spat out by the Montecito machine. This constant drip of damaging information, tales of separate hotel rooms, financial arguments, and workplace bullying, ensures that the Sussex brand remains synonymous with chaos rather than compassion. They are trapped in a self-fulfilling prophecy. Their paranoia drives away the talent they need to fix their reputation, and the subsequent failures only justify their paranoia. As we look toward the final half of 2026, the question is no longer if their professional infrastructure will collapse, but what will be left standing when it finally does. A well-placed source suggests that the couple is now operating on a skeleton crew of true believers, individuals who are willing to sacrifice their own professional standing for the chance to remain in the orbit of a fading royal light. But even the most devoted acolytes eventually reach a breaking point. When the money finally dries up and the last of the A-list invites vanish, the Sussexes will find themselves alone in their $29 million fortress, surrounded only by the echoes of their own grievances and the ghosts of the many professionals they discarded along the way. It is a grim, lonely ending for a couple who once thought they could reinvent the world, only to find they couldn't even manage a moderately successful office. As we cast our eyes toward the upcoming tour of Australia in mid-April 2026, the contrast between the couple's current reality and their triumphant 2018 visit is nothing short of breathtaking in its tragedy. What was once a vibrant, hopeful introduction of a new royal couple to the Commonwealth has devolved into a highly controversial, fragmented farce that insiders are already labeling a pseudo-royal circus. This time, there is no shared carriage ride, no unified front of youthful energy. Instead, the itinerary is reportedly split down the middle, a logistical admission of a marriage that can no longer sustain a joint appearance for more than a few minutes at a time. A well-placed source suggests that the scheduling reflects a deep-seated domestic compromise, born not of professional necessity, but of an inability to be in the same room without the air turning cold. While the PR team in Montecito attempts to frame this as a multifaceted approach to global outreach, the intelligent observer sees it for what it truly is: a desperate attempt to keep two colliding egos from detonating on a world stage. Meghan Markle's segment of this Australian venture is particularly telling, as she has reportedly positioned herself as the high priestess of a girls' weekend wellness retreat in the lush surroundings of Byron Bay. For the Duchess, this is her moment of ultimate self-actualization, a chance to step away from the dead weight of royal tradition and embrace her true calling as a global lifestyle guru for the ultra-wealthy. Inside her mind, she is no longer a mere duchess, but a transcendent figure of feminine empowerment, charging extortionate fees for the privilege of hearing her speak on curated authenticity and the architecture of joy. A source behind closed doors has revealed that Meghan feels a smug sense of victory in this solo venture, convinced that she is finally being recognized for her own brilliance rather than her marital connection. She moves through these spaces with a practiced, beatific smile, entirely shielded from the reality that her wellness brand is viewed by many as a hollow, commercialized shell, a collection of empty platitudes designed to line her pockets while she continues to play the victim of a system she so effectively exploited. Meanwhile, Prince Harry is left to wander the more somber corridors of military mental health panels in Sydney, a solitary figure who appears increasingly marooned in his own life. The Duke, according to a longtime family acquaintance, feels a profound and gnawing humiliation as he realizes he has been relegated to a secondary character in what he was told would be a shared journey of liberation. His inner monologue is said to be one of quiet desolation. He is a man who once commanded respect on the battlefield, now reduced to a traveling advocate for a cause that often feels secondary to his wife's commercial ambitions. He finds himself looking out at audiences and seeing not the adoring crowds of his youth, but a skeptical public that is increasingly weary of his constant truth-telling. The atmosphere surrounding his solo engagements is reportedly one of heavy, melancholic duty, a stark contrast to the performative glitz of Meghan's retreat, leaving the Duke to grapple with the realization that in his quest for freedom, he has become a man with no true home and a role that feels increasingly like a costume he is no longer allowed to take off. The atmosphere of this Australian tour is defined by a shallow performative glitz that struggles to mask a profound lack of actual substance or genuine charity. The air in the VIP lounges and five-star suites is thick with the scent of brand synergy and crisis management rather than the spirit of service that defines a true royal visit. There is an immense pressure on the couple to project an image of success, yet every interaction feels meticulously staged, every smile slightly too forced, and every separate appearance a glaring reminder of the chasm between them. A source within the inner circle has noted that the tension behind the scenes is palpable, with the couple's respective teams operating like rival political factions rather than a unified office. This wellness culture they are peddling is a thin veil for a very modern kind of desperation, where mindfulness is used as a shield against the legitimate criticism of their increasingly transparent commercial motivations. The Australian public, famously direct and possessing a low tolerance for pretension, is viewing this visit with a significantly more cynical eye than they did 8 years ago. They see through the pseudo-royal posturing, recognizing that this is not a visit of state, but a marketing exercise for a brand that is rapidly losing its luster. Any sign of domestic tension or further divisive agency will be seized upon by a population that has grown tired of the Sussexes' constant grievances and perceived hypocrisy. A well-placed source in Sydney suggests that the vibe is one of polite indifference at best and active mockery at worst, as the couple tries to reclaim a relevance that they have already forfeited through their own actions. The long-term consequences of this disastrous tour are likely to be the final undeniable confirmation to the global public that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are operating as two entirely separate entities, bound together only by legal documents and the lingering, desperate hope of a PR miracle. As the tour draws to a close, the narrative will likely shift from their global impact to the glaring reality of their professional and personal divorce. The padding method reveals the hollow core of this entire venture, the inner smugness of a wife who thinks she has outgrown her husband, and the quiet despair of a prince who realizes he is now just a footnote in her lifestyle blog. Once the unified front is so publicly abandoned in favor of separate itineraries and diverging goals, the Sussex brand is effectively dead in the water. They are returning to Montecito not as a conquering power couple, but as two individuals who have finally proven that their perfect love story was a carefully managed illusion that could not survive the cold light of reality. The separate lives they are leading in Australia are merely a dress rehearsal for the permanent separation that many insiders believe is now inevitable, leaving the monarchy to continue its steady, dignified course while the Sussexes fade into the background noise of celebrity culture. The quiet, creeping realization that the grand Sussex experiment has catastrophically failed on its own terms is now the dominant conversation in the exclusive drawing rooms of both London and Los Angeles. As we move through 2026, the frantic noise of their initial freedom has been replaced by a chilling, sobering silence, the sound of a phone that no longer rings with invitations to the Oscars, the Met Gala, or the inner sanctums of global power. A well-placed source suggests that the Hollywood elite, a group that prizes success above all else, has effectively moved on, viewing the Duke and Duchess not as revolutionary icons, but as a cautionary tale of how to squander unparalleled cultural capital in record time. The air around their Montecito estate is no longer charged with the electricity of new beginnings. It is thick with the heavy, stagnant atmosphere of a project that has run out of steam, leaving its protagonists isolated in a world they thought they would conquer. They are finding that while notoriety can be easily bought with a well-timed grievance, true respect and enduring influence must be earned through a consistency of character that they have consistently failed to demonstrate. Inside the quiet rooms of his secret hotel sanctuary, Prince Harry is reportedly grappling with a profound and hollow sense of emptiness that no amount of Californian sun can burn away. His inner monologue, according to a source close to palace circles, has shifted from the righteous anger of his memoir to a deep, gnawing regret as he realizes that the victory he sought against his family has left him entirely alone. He is a man who destroyed his foundations to build a castle on shifting sands, only to find that the new structure offers no protection against the cold reality of irrelevance. He watches from the sidelines as the monarchy he once criticized finds a new, stable rhythm, realizing with a start that he is no longer the rebel prince, but a redundant exile whose stories have all been told. The weight of his isolation is compounded by the fact that he has no one left to turn to. He is trapped in a loop of his own making, haunted by the memory of a life of service that gave him a purpose he has been unable to replicate in the hollow corridors of commercial celebrity. Meghan Markle, meanwhile, is said to be engaged in a far colder and more clinical calculation of her own next move, already mentally distancing herself from the wreckage of the joint Sussex brand. A source behind closed doors suggests that the Duchess, ever the pragmatist when it comes to her own advancement, has begun to view Harry not as her partner in a grand revolution, but as a liability whose plummeting popularity is dragging her down with him. Her inner monologue is reportedly focused on an exit strategy that allows her to retain her titles and her lifestyle while shedding the dead weight of her husband's perpetual melancholia and royal baggage. She is already laying the groundwork for a future as a solo entity, a lifestyle mogul, a political hopeful, or a high-end consultant, convinced that her own brilliance has been hampered by Harry's inability to fully commit to the Hollywood game. To Meghan, the failure of their joint ventures is not a shared tragedy, but a personal inconvenience that requires a strategic pivot toward a life where she is the sole architect of her own destiny, regardless of the cost to the man who sacrificed everything to be by her side. The atmosphere of their daily existence has become one of chilling domestic professionalization, where every interaction is mediated by the need to protect their individual interests. A well-meaning staff member has described the Montecito mansion as a house divided, with his and hers wings that are rarely breached, and a schedule that ensures they are seldom required to interact without the presence of an aide or a digital buffer. The pressure of maintaining the illusion of a united front is reaching a breaking point, yet the fear of the financial and reputational fallout of a legal split keeps them bound in a state of mutual resentment. They are living in a permanent state of post-drama exhaustion, where the constant need to manufacture a crisis just to remain in the headlines has left them physically and emotionally drained. The vibrant energy that once defined their arrival in California has evaporated, replaced by a cold, transactional silence that speaks volumes to those who are still paying attention to the cracks in the facade. The long-term consequences of this isolation are now becoming undeniable as the groundwork is being meticulously laid for a final announcement that will legally sever the bond that insiders know died a quiet death some time ago. The Sussex name, once a brand that commanded billion-dollar valuations and global intrigue, has become synonymous with a specific kind of modern failure, the inability to balance ego with reality. As they drift further apart in 2026, the world is witnessing the slow-motion dismantling of a fairy tale that was never built to survive the scrutiny of the real world. The ultimate irony is that by seeking to be more than royal, they have ended up being significantly less, finding themselves marooned in a cultural no-man's land where they are neither respected members of an ancient institution nor truly integrated members of the Hollywood elite. They are left with nothing but the echoes of their own complaints, realizing too late that the only thing more dangerous than being a spare is being a ghost in your own life. The saga that began with a televised wedding and a global promise of modernizing the monarchy has, by late 2026, concluded with the quiet, hollow thud of a spent firework. We are left looking at the debris of a historic self-inflicted blunder, one that will be studied for decades as the definitive case study in how to squander unparalleled privilege in the pursuit of a mirage. The Sussex brand is no longer a revolutionary force. It is a cautionary tale, a spent commercial commodity that has been outpaced by the very institution it sought to overshadow. As King Charles and Prince William lead a leaner, more focused monarchy into the future, Harry and Meghan find themselves relegated to the footnotes of a history they once thought they would rewrite. A source behind closed doors suggests that the ultimate tragedy is the sheer predictability of it all, the realization that without the crown to react against, they have no intrinsic gravity of their own. They have become the architects of their own obsolescence, two individuals who thought they were bigger than a 1,000-year-old institution, only to find that the world's interest was rooted in the titles they claimed to despise rather than the authentic selves they so desperately tried to sell. The final bitter reality for Prince Harry is the realization that his freedom has brought him only a profound and permanent displacement. A source within the inner circle describes a man who has finally stopped fighting and started looking back, realizing that the bridges he burned were the only ones that could lead him home. His inner monologue is reportedly a landscape of what-ifs and if-onlys, a silent admission that the glittering Californian dream has turned into a dusty, isolated reality where his presence is merely tolerated rather than celebrated. He remains a duke in name, but a stranger to his own country and a peripheral figure in his wife's increasingly desperate lifestyle launches. The atmosphere surrounding him is one of quiet, dignified defeat. He is a prince who played a high-stakes game of poker with his own heritage and lost every hand. He is now faced with the long, slow realization that the separate life he sought in his secret hotel sanctuary is not a temporary escape, but the permanent state of his existence, a gilded exile from which there is no dignified return. For Meghan Markle, the final verdict is one of a relentless ambition that ultimately consumed the very platform it relied upon. According to a well-placed source, she views the collapse of the Sussex brand not as a failure of her own making, but as a series of betrayals by an industry and a family that failed to grasp her vision. Her inner monologue remains a fortress of self-justification, even as she pivots toward increasingly minor commercial ventures to maintain the lifestyle she feels is her birthright. She has achieved the celebrity she craved, but it is a hollow, fragile fame, stripped of the respect and the historic weight that once gave her words meaning. She is a woman who wanted to be a queen on her own terms, only to find that the world she entered has a very short memory for those who do not produce results. The atmosphere of her current life is one of performative success, a series of curated Instagram moments and paid appearances that mask a profound lack of genuine influence, leaving her to rule over a kingdom of jams, teas, and fading public interest. The long-term consequences of this decade of drama are sobering for the monarchy, but devastating for the individuals involved. The crown has survived the Sussex storm by simply standing still, proving that duty and service are far more resilient than the fleeting trends of celebrity culture. However, for the Sussex children, the cost is an inheritance of estrangement and a heritage they may never truly know. This is the gravity of the situation, a family fractured beyond repair, a legacy tarnished for the sake of a streaming contract, and two people who once stood on a balcony at the center of the world, now sitting separately in the quiet rooms of a Montecito mansion. The grand experiment has ended, leaving nothing but the cold reality that the most expensive thing you can ever buy is a freedom that costs you your family. It is a tragedy of Shakespearean proportions, played out in the tabloids and on social media, ending exactly where it was always bound to, in the silence of irrelevance. As we close the book on this chapter of royal history, one is struck by the sheer exhaustion of it all. We have watched the Sussexes move from rebellion to victimhood, from commercial conquest to professional decoupling, and finally to this, a quiet, separate existence in a world that has largely stopped listening. There is a sense of intellectual satisfaction in seeing the truth finally surface, yet it is tempered by the sadness of a wasted potential. The monarchy continues its steady, dignified march through time, leaving the Duke and Duchess to navigate the sunset of their own fame in a world that has moved on to the next drama. They are no longer the story, they are the warning. And as the dust finally settles on the Sussex era, we are reminded that some traditions are worth preserving, not out of a fear of change, but because they provide a grounding that no amount of Californian wellness or Hollywood glitz can ever hope to replace. Leave your thoughts below. I read every word you write, and if you value this unvarnished look at the monarchy, do ensure you are subscribed and share this with those who appreciate the truth. Would you like me to generate a script for a different topic, perhaps focusing on the King's recent health updates?